All right. Hello, everybody. This is this might be a little longer of a video, but this is meant to be like a new player guide for the Champions of Chaos. I don't know what to call it. Expansion for Soulbound. It's supposed to be a sub game, but it's really the same game. So I've read through the rules, and this is mostly just a reskin of Soulbound, which I think is a good thing. There's just a few module, like an extra little bit rules. It's kind of interesting because if you cut everything out of the core modules for Soulbound, and you ignore that some of the things have been reskinned, there's not that much new content in the book, and it was pretty sloppily done. There's several instances. Now this is going to get fixed. I'm certain this will all be fixed before it goes to print. But they've been supposedly working on this for a long time, and I'm not sure that that's really true. I kind of feel like they just put it on the back burner. Maybe Soulbound isn't a very successful IP for them, which is sad because I love Soulbound. But it's just little things like some of the stuff that they reskinned did get corrected. So I know like the first copy I downloaded, it kept saying like Doom decreases. When the champions of chaos like succeed a goal, and Doom increases when they die, and it's supposed to be the opposite. But like I say, let's get into it. I shouldn't blather before doing too much into it, but this is essentially Soulbound, and the purpose of this video is actually for my players, just to give them something to listen to that might give them some insight into the basics of the rules. So, character concept, just so you guys know, and I explained this to my players already, this is a heroic fantasy game. Think Aragorn or Legolas, not Bilbo. Okay? You are going to be that level of hero. You're going to be killing swarms of goblins and slaying powerful monsters right from the jump. Freeform character, okay? So there are archetypes, but you can start with just a blank slate and build your character up from nothing. But the archetype only dictates how you start. So just think of a high fantasy character you would like to play, and ask your DM for help. Ask me for help, because there's a hell of a lot of talents in this game, and probably 90% of them don't do anything, or at least don't work the way you would like. So it's best to get help from somebody that knows the system really well, because there is a little bit of crunch in the system. But as long as you're like, oh, this thing says it gives me an increased melee step or an increased defense step, like that stuff is usually pretty powerful. So the XP system in Soulbound requires you to have some idea of what your character would want to accomplish with their life. In Champions of Chaos, it's heavily implied that the DM will be giving you your goals, and you'll gain experience by completing those goals. Okay, so I do have a section I'm going to skip on how to do goals. It's just because I had made this before reading fully the XP system, and my players had a real hard time with doing goals, and so I wanted to tackle it head on, and then I found out, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be giving the players goals, and since they don't have party goals, they essentially just lose their personal goals, and their party goals become their goals. That might be confusing, but in Soulbound, your party as a whole has like a quest it's trying to accomplish, and everybody gets experience when you accomplish that. But you could also have like a side quest that only your character cared about, in this game, since the party quest is gone, basically everybody can just go on the main quest. You'll have another type of advancement metric uh, through favor that we can talk about later. All right, so the basics of character creation, and you guys have already made your characters, so I might have to timestamp this video so you can skip a lot of this. But you can either choose your archetype or build your own. Most of these archetypes have no option for race, so you're just stuck with whatever race you are. Of course, if you're building your own, you can choose a race. The races are very limited. It's human, gore, and ogroid. Oh, and Skaven, of course. So then, if you choose an archetype, you're going to get a certain number of XP and a certain number of starting talents. You just choose that. Just a basic idea, make sure that you put focus in skills that you think will be very difficult for your character. Like if you're a spellcaster, you should definitely put a couple, well, try to get your focus to 2 if you can. It'll benefit you greatly. You'll find it'll make a lot of your spells cast smoother. Then gain starting gear. Certain classes have choices of gear. In the Foundry module, you'll just have a little radio button. You can choose between the gear parcels. And then again, archetypes only matter for character creation. After character creation, it's free. We're going to skip the goals. So this is just a note on character advancement. So mind, body, and soul are very expensive XP-wise. When I ran this before, you can only give yourself like a maximum of 3 pips in a skill. And I had my players basically give themselves 3 pips in whatever their attack skill was, and they just were like, okay, my character's leveled. I'm like basically a level 20 D&D character. And they had no idea where they wanted to go for that. So this is just me kind of trying to sell other options. So first off, stats, focus. When we get into roles, you'll see why focus is important. And I kind of point out talents are a bit of a mess, but there's a lot of cool options. If you look through the talents yourself, it'll take you an awful long time to find anything. And I just make a note here, things that increase your ladder position are usually pretty strong. And then we'll talk about glory at some point. All right, now we're finally getting into the rules. So I'm going to go over roles, movement, actions, metal, which is very important, favor. And this is just a note I wanted to put for myself. So like I said, this is a reskin. Almost everything in this system is the same as something from the core Soulbound module. In fact, there's a lot of talents that are just renamed. I didn't bother calling them out here, but one of the important callouts, if you're going to be using the Soulbound Foundry module, is there's been some skill reskins. So I'm using cults for theology. I'm using devotion for worship, and I'm using entertain in place of enthrall. All right. That's all these are, right? The chaos guys can't entertain anybody, so they get enthrall instead, which I think is fair. So this is the most important slide in this whole thing, and I probably could have cut all that stuff out at the beginning. So how do roles work in this game? So the format, you see that's 4:2 body athletics. The first number is the difficulty number. So that tells you what your successes are going to be. So in the case of that 4:2 body athletics test, the difficulty number is 4. So each 4 plus is a success. The second number is the complexity, and that's the number of successes you need to actually pass the test. So for the above example, you need at least 2 4 pluses because the complexity is 2. The body athletics tells you how you're going to build your dice pool. This is a dice pool game. You're going to take whatever your body stat is, put that in the pool, and whatever your training in athletics is, and put that into the pool. Focus allows you to increase a die value by 1 per point of focus you have to spend. You can stack it. So you could turn, say, like, well, let's look at my example here. Okay, so on the right-hand side, I have a real-world example. This guy's trying to cast a spell. It's a 6/1 mind channeling spell. His mind stat is 4. His channeling training is 1. So his dice pool is going to be 5 dice. His mind plus his training and channeling. So he rolls 5 dice. Let's say this is the results. 5, 4, 3, 3, and a 1. As the result stands, he's failed the test because he doesn't have any 6s. He only needed 1 6 to pass to cast the spell. He got 0 at this point. However, we have 3 focus. And what you'll see we did with the focus was we put one focus into the 5 to make it a 6. And we put 2 focus into the 4 to make it a 6. So now suddenly we've got 2 successes. So we've passed the test, and they've got something called degrees of success in this game, and that's your extra successes. So we have 1 degree of success, okay? Because we've got 1 extra success over this, and for a spell, that would be that would allow you to overcast the spell and make it more powerful in some way, potentially more damage, hit more targets, increase the duration. There's various effects of spells. So just to run through it again, we're called to make a 6/1 mind channeling test. That means only dice values of 6 are successes. We need at least 1 to pass. We've got 4 mind and 1 training. So we get 5 dice. We roll the dice. Any 6s are successes. We need at least 1. We got 0, but we have 3 focus. So we're able to increase the dice values to get as many successful die phases as we can. In this case, we passed the test with the first dice, so we cross that out. And we have 1 extra success from the second dice, so that gives us a degree of success, which for melee combat, that gives you extra damage. Same thing with ranged. For skill checks, that usually gives you some kind of a boon or bonus. So that's the basics of this. So if the DM calls you to, say, do a, let's say a 4/3 mind channeling test, well, we'd still roll our 4 dice, and let's say this is what we got. We would probably just put our focus into these 3s, and then we would have passed. So it was a 4/3 test, so we would have gotten 3 for the success, and then we would have had 1 degree of success with the extra. Hopefully that's clear. But that is the dice system for the entire game. That's what everything uses. Everything runs off of that dice system and that roll system, and there's no other type of roll you're ever going to make. It's always going to be formatted in this way, and the damage will be dictated by, like, let's say, either by the spell or by the weapon damage plus your degrees of success. So metal is the next thing I want to talk about. This is what makes your character like powerful. Okay, so you recover one metal at the start of your turn. All right, so you can essentially kind of have it in your mind that you've always got access to one of these actions, and it doesn't really cost you anything. Once you use 2 metal in a round, you know that it's going to take you longer to regenerate that extra metal, and you might not get it back. But here's the thing, your metal is equal to half your soul rounded up. So if you have 3 soul, you get 2 metal. You know, potentially if you've got 5 soul, you would have 3 metal. But remember, those mind, body, and soul are expensive experience-wise. So what does metal do? It lets you take another action, and that can be actions you've already taken. So let's say you've got 2 metal. You could potentially charge with your normal action, do an attack, use a metal for a second attack, and use a metal for a third attack. It's completely viable. These also stack. So let's say I'm fighting a big monster. I might want to double my training. And if I've got another metal, I could double my focus as well. And that will double the amount of focus I have access to, and then double the training. Well, let's say I have 2 pips in melee. Suddenly I'll be rolling an extra 4 dice instead of 2 dice on melee. So that's a big deal. And like I say, these are metal. Oh my gosh, this mouse wheel is too sensitive. Metal is, you're meant to use this every round. Okay, like you may want to, if you have more than one, you might want to keep some in reserve, but there is no reason not to use at least 1 metal per round. And the other thing you can see here is certain talents also require a metal. And certain prayers also require a metal. And the way that I've read it is you would need to use an action in addition to a metal. So it's not a situation where it's like, oh, this prayer says it requires 1 metal, so like I get a free metal action to do the prayer. No. You use your action and spend the metal to do the prayer. Or if you, say, have 2 metal, you can use 1 metal to get an action and the other metal to actually cast the prayer. So, keep an eye out on that. The FAQ, by the way, says that it's not intended that you can like double your training. But there's a note that's like, hey, it's not intended, but I mean, it's not a big deal. It shouldn't break the game. For purposes of my game, we're just going to, we're not going to be able to like double and triple stack these. But I kind of am with the game creators. I don't think it's that big a deal. But like I'm just not going to do it just for avoiding, like, let's say we get a guy with 3 soul and he doubles his training like 3 times or something like that. I just don't want to deal with it. All right, let's move on. So favor. So these games, if you play any Cubicle 7 games, if you've played Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, if you played Warhammer the Old World, whatever, there's always Dark Heresy, Imperium Malediction. There's always a meta currency. And in this game, it's favor. I'm on the... So I think I like favor. I think I like what it does for the game. I will see in practice. But one of the things I noticed in Soulbound is instead of favor, it was Soulfire. The group had to agree how Soulfire was used. And I think there was a penalty for if somebody didn't agree, like Doom increased or something. Um, so nobody ever used it, right? It was a very limited pool, and nobody ever wanted to be the one to say, oh, I want to use the Soulfire, or oh, so and so you use Soulfire on this. They just never used it. In this game, the favor only burns. So I think it's going to be just as rare for people to use it because normally what people ask is, and I get this a lot, and if my players are watching this, they'll remember asking is, hey, fate regenerates every session, right? They want to be reassured that they're not spending, an hour-long cooldown in World of Warcraft. They want to save it for when they need it, which they're never going to need it, right? Although in this game you might, because since you burn it, the effects are very powerful, and you can see them listed here. Auto pass a test, reroll any dice you've already rolled, recover all hit points, essentially, recover all toughness, restore all metal. That could be very good for some characters. And then cheat death. You don't die. It's like a life, right? The way to gain favor, as you can see, is you get these acts of worship cards, essentially. So each one of these, you can do one per session. And if you violate your god's strictures, it's like a code of conduct for each god. You'll get a punishment, and their disfavor will increase. Well, anytime you complete an act of worship, their disfavor goes down, and one of your punishments is forgiven and goes away. So these are extremely important. Like, there's some paradoxical ones. So for Nurgle, you're not allowed to heal a sick person, nor heal a dying person. And that put me in a little bit of a bind as a DM because all the Nurgle archetypes are healers. So it's very strange to me because it's like, okay, so if your friend is dying, you can't heal him without taking a displeasure from Nurgle. Is that how it's working? And I think that is the answer. Or I think the intention is you're not supposed to heal somebody's illness if they're sick, but you could potentially still heal their wounds. But potentially, right? It's pretty non-ambiguous. Like, or another one for Nurgle is you have to kill any type of a healer or surgeon that you meet, or you're going to hit disfavor. So some of these gods, it's easy to get disfavor. So that's another thing you need to do acts of worship for, because you can potentially become a chaos spawn and lose your character on the 4th punishment. So doing one of these will decrease the disfavor, and it will forgive one of your punishments that you rolled. But it also grants you reward, favor reward. Your favor starts at 1, and it will increase anytime you get one of these. You can spend these favors for dark gifts. They have boons, items, and mutations. But if you look at these are all pretty flavorful for the god. I thought it was pretty cool. And you pick one of these, and you pick what you're going to complete at the end of the session, and you're going to actually tick off what you've done. Once you complete this card, the whole thing, You get 5 favor and you can start over. But as you might imagine, you're probably going to get the low hanging fruit pretty quickly. And then you're going to have to start doing the more difficult ones. And a lot of these, I think everybody has, like right here, complete a long term goal. I think that's going to be fairly difficult because a long term goal is a very big milestone. They give bad long term goals in the examples in the Champions of Chaos supplement. I think one of them is literally to destroy Hammerhall Akshi, right? Never going to happen, right? I have no clue how you're going. You're how long would that take even uh, in a session? I mean, it would take years of play. I feel like unless you just let the players kill Hammerhall. Um, so I think it's going to be difficult to actually finish these, but like War Leader, lead a mighty warband, raging army right from the front, clashing with the enemy first in the bore. Like so. How viable is it that I'm going to be a warlord of an army, but we're still going to be an adventuring kind of warband? Um, I think it's unlikely you're going to finish these, and I think you're probably going to get stuck after the low hanging fruit, and I think you're probably going to become a chaos spawn. Because the other thing that causes disfavor is failing a channeling test. So for like wizards and stuff, I mean, like if they actually fail to cast a spell, they're in trouble. Quick note on initiative, it's fixed initiative. That's all you need to know. You don't roll for initiative. Your character has an initiative. It's equal to his mind plus awareness training plus reflexes training. And then you kind of roll off or choose if you're tied. Movement. This is a zone movement game. I had to reassure my players that this isn't screwed up like the old world. It works pretty well in this game. So let's just look at the map really quick. So, okay, so Zone 1, there's fallen statues providing partial cover. I don't make my players place their token exactly where they want it to be in the zone. I just presume that they are using the stuff they have to the best of their ability. So, like, if they're in this zone, they might have their token right here at the front of the bridge. But I would still presume that their actual character is taking cover behind the statues. Okay. Um, this zone 5, the war camp ruins, total cover. Again, if they're in the zone, presumably they are using the wall. All right. Now, they tell you in the rulebook to be dynamic with zones. Like potentially a player could smash down this wall if he wanted. The rickety bridge, they could destroy the rickety bridge, um, making it so people would have to jump across the lava flow in order to get to one zone or the other. Like maybe there could be a trap rigged under the bridge. Um, it's a pretty, I don't know. I enjoyed running combats in Soulbound, and I remember my players kind of enjoyed playing them as well. So the timing of your movement is free. Um, now keep in mind your medium speed really means you can move one zone. But for just for example purposes, let's say you're mounted on a horse and your speed is fast. That means you can move 2 zones. So what that means is you can, let's say I'm in zone 4. I could move into zone 5, attack somebody, and then use the rest of my movement to move back into zone 4. There's no attacks of opportunity in this game unless an enemy has a special talent or you have a special talent. I believe it's called Opportunist. So that's a perfectly viable way to do like a ride-by attack or a spring attack. So it's the same thing. Like if you don't want to be in close range with a monster, and you're in the same zone with them, you can move in close and then move back out to another part of the zone. Okay. When playing Theater of the Mind, and they do kind of encourage you to do a little Theater of the Mind, that's just when you talk things out and you don't have a map. You can just work with the DM, right? Never presume you understand what's happening in the battlefield. You're dependent on the DM to agree with what you're imagining, right? It's in the DM's head. And even if the DM described something wrong or implied something, you really just need to you need to ask the DM questions, right? If the DM says, "Hey, there's 2 guys. One guy's in this room, one guy's 30 feet away." You have to ask the DM. You have to tell him, like, "I'd like to charge the guy that's 30 feet away. Could I make it?" And he'll confirm or deny. Don't just say, "I'm charging the guy 30 feet away," because suddenly you're going to find out there's a chasm between them, right? And depending on how aggressively you said you're charging, he might throw your ass down that chasm to teach you a lesson. I don't like to DM that way, but I've played enough games to know that it happens. Normal speed can move one zone for free or anywhere within their zone. Climbing, swimming, squeezes reduces speed 1 step. That puts most people to slow. The run action can be used to move an additional zone. The charge action includes a 1 zone movement. There's no attacks of opportunity. Mounts increase your speed. Metal can be used for runs, so that's just extra movement. I just wanted to underscore that there's a lot more movement. Jump is body times 2. That's part of your movement. A high jump is just your body, but if you get a running start, it's also body times 2. So if my body is 3, technically I could jump 6 feet, right? So just work with your DM, because let's say on this zone map, we don't know how wide the lava flow is, right? So you just have to ask your DM. You just have to be like, "Hey, DM." I wouldn't even ask him how wide it is. I would just ask, maybe state how far you can jump and ask if you can make it across. There's no roll involved. It's kind of automatically put into part of your move, the jump, right? Like, let's say I want to jump over this wall, I might be able to do that. Or if I'm climbing, I'm going to be slow. So suddenly it's going to take me an action to leave the zone, and it's all kinds of nonsense. Okay, combat actions. So these ones here, I made a slide for. All right. Attack, charge, called shot. These are kind of complicated. Defend is a big deal, so I wanted to spend some time on it. So dodge, this is to dodge tank. I always like it when they have this action. It can be a boring action for a player to take, but it can really save your party sometimes. It will increase your defense 1 step, and it'll give you 1 extra dice for defense. Flee is if you just want a single character to run away. Skaven can do this without penalty, anybody else, it will decrease your doom by 1, which is not a good thing for the Chaos characters. A retreat is when the entire group leaves, and that will decrease doom by 1 for the entire group. Like, you don't have to. If everybody did their own flee action and there's 3 people in the group, that's decreasing doom by 3 instead of 1. The way the flee action works is you declare it, and at the end of the round, you basically just disappear off the battlefield. It's one of those things. I personally like it because escapes are, just from a DM's perspective, they're kind of a pain in the butt. Because you need to, you kind of need to put in a chase. And they have rules for chases in this, by the way, but you need to do a chase. And if the party's trying to run away, they probably can't escape. Right? So what am I going to do? Just kill them? I mean, I don't know. I've never really liked it. So even though it was abused in the Old World campaign, I still do like Flee and Retreat. Seize the Initiative allows you to set your initiative value. You're giving up an action to set your initiative. Shove, you can move a target out of close range. As far as I'm concerned, let's say you and your opponent are right next to a cliff edge or something, you could shove them off that cliff. Help gives ally bonus dice. Grapple inflicts restrain, makes it so they can't move. Parlay is an action you can take to kind of force a social roll to try to get something, like either, beg for mercy, tell somebody to run, tell somebody to surrender, right? React is a big deal. This has reaction actions in it. So you can basically say, like, oh, if this guy enters my zone, I'm going to charge him. Or if this guy starts casting a spell, I'm going to try to counter it or something like that. It's nice to have. Improvise, you can use anything. You could just make up an action. All right. Let's move on to attack. So combat rolls is the same as the other roll system, but there's an added wrinkle, and they call it the ladder. Okay. So if you look here at the ladder, it's actually a word. Extraordinary, superb, great, good, average, and poor. Based on your ladder position compared to your enemies, that will determine what the difficulty is of your attack roll. So if your melee or accuracy is 1 step higher than the target's defense, the difficulty will be 3. So you'll roll all of your attack dice, and every 3+ is a success, and you'll take all of your degrees of success plus the weapon damage and deal that to the enemy. You'll either just kill off members of a swarm, or you will deal damage to their toughness and hopefully cause wounds to them. And as you see, if your melee is worse than the defense, you start rolling 5s and 6s. So you determine your ladder position. It's really like what your dice pool should be, right? So body plus weapon skill, whatever the total of that, let's say it's a 5, that would put me at good melee. Defenses is body and reflexes. This means everybody would be happy to have some reflexes that'll help them put their defense up. So an attack, like I say, degrees of success plus the weapon damage. You reduce the toughness by the damage. Once they get to 0 toughness, the excess damage is taken as wounds. You cap out at being able to deal 3 wounds from a single attack. And the more wounds you deal in a single attack, it changes the name of the wound and it makes it much harder to heal. At 0 wounds, you are mortally wounded and you start rolling death tests. So essentially, think of this like if this was Dungeons and Dragons, you have HP, which will refresh completely in between each encounter. All you have to do is take a breather and you get all of your HP back. But you also have like the last few HP in a separate category called wounds. You will not die until all of your wounds are taken away, and the wounds are much harder to heal. They take much more time. So taking even a single wound is kind of a big deal, because yes, your toughness is very, your HP is very, very in flux, right? It'll fully heal, but that wound will stick around, and once they're all gone, that's when your character starts dying. So the charge action is interesting in this because there's a few games I play where charge is all upside. In this, you have a big downside. Your defense is reduced by 1 step until your next turn. And that's kind of a big deal. Because remember, there aren't that many ladder positions. And if you're sitting on an average defense and it goes down to poor, even chumps will start hitting you like a truck. You know, even a swarm of goblins will start kicking your teeth in. So that's a pretty big cost. But what do you get for that cost? You get to move 1 zone. You can't charge if your target's already close, but you make an attack with +1 dice. So still a powerful action, but that's a big cost, so keep that in mind. You'll want to just play with it in game and see how bad it is and see how much it affects you. I mean, you'll kind of know. Like you can learn monsters fairly easy because the DM's going to disclose to you what their ladder position is, because they have to, right? They can't just tell you, oh, roll blah 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 blah. Like even you would just be able to see what you're rolling and know what their ladder position is, right? Like if your difficulty number is 5, you know that their defense is better than your stat, right? And if it's a 6, you know it's potentially way better than your stat. But yeah, so just keep in mind charge. I would personally be careful charging into a very dangerous situation because there is a downside, and I think the characters will feel it. So called shots, I'm told these are busted. On Reddit, when people were first talking about in the Soulbound subreddit, when people were first talking about Champions of Chaos, and I was basically like, hey, I like Soulbound, I hope it's only a minor change, and it was. I think that's a good thing. There's a couple of comments that were just like, Stunned is just gonna rule the game again. Oh my gosh, called shots so OP. So I was like, what the heck are they talking about? Because I didn't remember called shots being that big a deal. And I looked it up, and I guess I think there's only like 1 thread in the subreddit where somebody's complaining about it. And essentially what happened was they had a big boss. But they didn't put anything else in the arena. And there weren't any other monsters. It was just like a Lord of Change. And some dude got lucky and manage to do a called shot to the head of the boss and stun it. And then the rest of the party was just able to like burn off all of their metal and just kill that boss like really, really quickly. Um, so I mean, there is that power, but there keep in mind here, um, if the difficulty is greater than 6, it's not possible. All right, there's a note here. Now, we saw the ladder, and essentially you never get to a difficulty greater than 6 because it's your melee is 2 steps or lower than the defense at 6. What I would do here is if your melee is 3 steps lower, then it's beyond like it's a 7 and you can't do it. And in order to get a headshot, the enemy gets +2 defense on the ladder. So I would still take your 6s as successes, but at least for me, I would consider, let's say that puts you to 3 below the enemy. I would still let you roll 6s to hit, but you wouldn't be allowed to do a called shot because technically the success number is a 7. So what do you get? Stunned. The creature can take either an action or a move. They cannot spend metal. Their speed becomes slow. And the stunned creature's defense decreases 1 step. Okay. Big debuff. Hit them in the arms. They drop an item, potentially a weapon. So that's a way to disarm. Hit them in the legs. They drop prone. And prone, melee, and accuracy are decreased 1 step. And then if you attack a prone creature, you get an increase to melee or accuracy as long as it's close range. And then you actually, I think it's harder if you're out of close range. Yeah, you decrease your accuracy 1 step because the person's really kind of taking cover. I don't believe this is busted. I mean, like the heroes, especially in Soulbound, I mean, it's not that hard to kill a champion monster, especially with some luck. But I think with the rules and just kind of accepting, like, okay, if his defense is 3 higher than my melee, I just can't do a headshot. Like, it's just impossible. That brings it back into line. But also, you gotta build encounters that have more interesting stuff than just one big monster. One big monster does not work in this game. You do a big monster with a little mini army, or you do a big monster with some real weird thing going on in the arena, or some huge hazard, or he's got some other huge advantage. So I don't think called shots busted, but at the same time, if you're a player, definitely keep this in mind. The stunned is very good. Prone can also be very helpful. And of course, hitting them in the arms, making them drop potentially like their weapon or a shield or something, big deal. So I think this is a good action. Obviously, you could use a metal to do this a couple of times or what have you. So I like called shot. I don't necessarily think it's busted, but keep an eye out for it. So defend. So I wanted to call this out because I think this is a action that was sorely needed in the old world. So you can either defend an ally or a zone. If you defend an ally in close range, anybody that tries to attack the ally, their attacks automatically shift to you and they use your defense stats. Very good. I love it. I think that's the way it should be for a heroic game. It's just, I'm defending this person. You simply cannot hurt them, right? If they get caught in an AoE, they get caught in an AoE, right? I don't think there's much we can do about that. But the other interesting thing is you can choose a zone. If you're defending a zone, an enemy has to use an action to enter the zone, which is a big deal. That's going to disrupt their action economy a lot. And they have to do an opposed either reflexes or might against your might. And if you have friends, they're going to increase the dice you get. So, love it. It actually gives you options on the battlefield. It actually gives you some tactical options. And it also, the monsters can do this too. So that's some interesting obstacles for the players to deal with. So this is the last slide I've got here. So buying, I think this campaign, it's going to have a very low gear turnover. I think you're going to be better off stealing the gear if it appears in game. So, pay attention. Keep your bananas peeled for loot. And if your DM's foolish enough to have the loot there, just make sure you don't get too excited and you mention, oh, I'd like to pick that up too, by the way. And hopefully he won't just arbitrarily say it's destroyed. So here's the deal. You need to take an acquire gear endeavor. You get a single roll per endeavor on one piece of gear. So it's an extended test. What that means is you will combine successes over multiple endeavors, because most of these you cannot succeed at in one endeavor. You're either going to take a enthrall test or an intimidation test. And if you look, some of these, so like a Warhammer is 3/6, okay? You're probably not throwing 6 dice. So it's almost certainly going to, like, let's say I've only got 3 dice for the check. At a minimum, it's going to take 2 acquire gear endeavors for that character to ever get his Warhammer. And then if we're talking like a war pick, man, that's a minimum of 3, probably 4 or 5. They get even higher than this. You could get up to needing 12 successes, for example. It might be worth it to make a buying character, to make a character with good enthrall or intimidation to acquire gear for your party. That said, I don't really think you need gear so bad in this game. That was one of the things I felt about Soulbound. It was like, okay, you got this kind of complicated, like, we pay for everything with healing potions. So I always want money because money is healing potions. And I want gear because I can turn gear into healing potions. But really, just the basic gear is usually good enough. There's very little, like the weapon selection isn't that high. And the weapon traits aren't that varied to where it really matters that much. But just keep in mind, that's the bottom line, is it's endeavors to get items. Even if you have a great guy that can get an item in a single endeavor, which is very, very unlikely, you're maxing out at like 2 or 3 items a downtime, and it's more realistically 1 if you're lucky per downtime. And downtimes don't happen that often. So I don't think it's a wrong buying system. But I mean, your damn warlock engineer is going to be crafting shit. Like, your warlock engineer is probably going to be crafting doom rockets more frequently than you're going to be buying an item. And I think that'll probably be okay. I'm excited to try the system. I already know how I like Soulbound, and as DM, love it. Love running Soulbound. I actually think I enjoy running Soulbound more than my players enjoy playing it. Um, I'm hoping that my players enjoy Champions of Chaos, um, and we're able to jive with it. I've got a basic idea of what I'm gonna try and do with them, and I was gonna do something quick, but it's already kind of running off the rails. So I've got to start just putting interesting encounters together and maybe sketching maps. Um, but we'll get to it. So I'm excited. Um, just some closing thoughts because this is a live stream, and I mean it doesn't really matter. Like I'm at the end of it anyway, right? Um, this is a high fantasy game, and the excitement comes more from creating interesting scenarios for the players and trying to have the players interact with them. Make each encounter like a puzzle. You know, give them encounters where they can just kill hordes of enemies and feel heroic, but at the same time, um, I would try to maybe download some of the free supplements that they have. Like I think Crash and Burn is free, and just look at the combat encounters. Look at the encounter tables they do there, and they really are a lot of fun. I run a lot of the little book modules for Soulbound, and like I say, it was a pleasure to run. Um, my players enjoyed it. Um, it was a great time. We did Crash and Burn, and I think the starter set module in Bright Spear. Um, we might have done one other little one. I can't remember though, but very enjoyable. Had a great time. So I'm excited to play this. I would love, love, love it if Champions of Chaos breathed new life into Soulbound, because as far as I'm concerned, this is my favorite dice pool system. And some of the big stumbling blocks have been handled, right? What's one of them? One of the huge stumbling blocks for me was goals. Players could only get experience through goals, and the way this is set up, I can set the goals for my players. We don't have to have this. It was the most awkward conversation in the world. It's like, player, I don't know what my goals should be. Well, tell me about your character. My character is, like, I don't know, a Sylvaneth, and he likes to collect different types of mosses and see if they'll grow on his skin. Okay, well, maybe try and look for a special type of moss or something like that to grow in your skin, since that's your only character trait, and that sounds like a perfect goal. All right, sounds great, DM. And then here we go, 6 sessions later. It's like, dude, you haven't done any goals, man. Like, what's your goal? Oh, I don't know, something about moss. Well, dude, you have to go, like, you have to in character be looking for the moss. Oh, used to drive me crazy. I remember the players got like they got really excited about this dog NPC. So they set their goal as keeping the dog alive, and immediately when combat starts, they abandoned the dog and it instantly got killed. And they didn't even try to recover his body. They were just like, "We're out of here, bro." And I was like, I just kept trying to express to him. I was just like, "Dude, you have to pay attention to your goals." Um, well, in this system, they don't. I basically just assign them quests, and they're just going to complete them like MMO quests, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Um, Another thing, this is going to be a big burden on the DM. I have to keep track of the strictures of the players. And this is a source of much DM dickery. I have to do my best not to have fallen paladin syndrome. This is something that's befallen me every time I played a fucking paladin in 3rd edition, which is I show up with a paladin. Session 0, I'm given an impossible moral choice. Essentially, no matter what I choose, it instantly changes my alignment, and I am permanently, forever unable to play as a paladin. I fucking hate it. Every DM has always done it to me immediately. Oh my gosh. So I have to try not to do that with the players, but I fully intend to know what their strictures are and create scenarios where they might fuck up, right? I give them the chance. I give them the chance to make the choice. And if they don't make a choice in accordance with what their god would want, then they're going to get punished. I think that will add interest to the game. I don't think it's necessarily going to be fallen paladin syndrome, right? Like something stupid like, oh, here's a Nurgle character and he's dying, and the healer has come to stop him from dying, and you've got one chance to kill this healer, otherwise he's going to heal you and escape. So are you going to murder him and die, or are you going to not murder him and take a punishment? You know what I'm saying? It's just stupid crap like that. I think one of the things I like about the punishment system is, at least at the start of the campaign, you can potentially correct one punishment per session, um, which means you kind of got a reserve punishment, right? It's kind of like, think about Papers, Please, right? Like, there's certain events where you just have to like let somebody in violation of the rules to get like a coin, or just because it's the right thing or something like that. And you've got a certain number of punishments you're allowed free per day. That's how I kind of think about it. Um, you've got that reserve that you can probably remove pretty easy, but outside of that, you got to watch your ass. I'm a little concerned because, I mean, potentially, oh, you've taken your 4th punishment, you might be dead. Or there's a high likelihood you'll take mutations, which will kill you anyway. So I don't know. I think that's my one concern is, I think, especially when they start getting their card filled out, and they don't have any low hanging fruit. They only have real difficult to complete acts of worship. Those punishments potentially are gonna just creep up and creep up and creep up until they're dead. But like I say, we'll see how it goes. I like the idea that favor is potentially like, yes, it's your burnable fate. which most people only burn the stuff in the case they need to like they have something real serious going on, like to save a life essentially, like just stop themselves from dying, and that's what I assume the case is going to be here. Nobody's going to use a favor unless it's to stop them from dying, and hopefully we'll see people buy some really cool chaos gifts. Um, so, like I say, I'm pretty excited. I know I like Soulbound. I enjoy making encounters for it. I enjoy running encounters for it. So, and Champions of Chaos, it addressed an experience problem. It addressed a progression problem through favor. Essentially, favor controls the progression. In some ways, it also kind of corrected the Endeavor problem. Like I remember my Soulbound, it was just like I'm sitting here gobsmacked. Like what the hell? Like why do they want to do? Why do they care about Endeavors? They're soulbound. Basically, everybody's kissing their ass all the time and giving them free places to stay and giving them free stuffs because they're like saviors of the universe, right? Like, I mean, like, why would like the fucking Avengers give a shit? Like, they're not gonna. Oh, we got a month off. Let's go fucking do a street performance for a couple extra dollars. I mean, they're not doing that crap. Um, but there's some good endeavors in this game, and you need to do endeavors to buy, as I've discussed, and that's the slide I have up. You can start a cult. You could increase doom. I mean, there's always a good reason to do an endeavor. So I'm fairly excited about that. So there's a lot of minor things that I think make a big difference, and I think it'll just make the experience smoother for the players. Um, I think the one challenging thing is I feel like as long as you're in the Bloodwind Spoil, you're going to be comfortable playing a Chaos character. I think once you get out of the Bloodwind Spoil, I think there's a lot of players that will be uncomfortable playing a Chaos character. Because they're going to be doing bad stuff. And I know, like, you're like, duh, no shit, I'm playing an evil character. Well, imagine a scenario where even the Saturday morning cartoon villain succeeds, right? The woman got run over by the train. The kids were blown up by dynamite. I mean, it can be silly, but at the same time, if the weight of what you're doing is conveyed to you accurately, you might not be that happy about succeeding. But we'll see. I mean, in the Bloodwind Spoil, right? You're really just out competing against other bad guys, or maybe some stupid adventurers wandered into your realm, so of course you're gonna kill them. I think it's much more palatable in the Bloodwind Spoil, but I think if the party gets out and infiltrates a city, I think they'll enjoy the infiltration. I think they'll enjoy the subversion a lot, but I think once they reap the fruits of their success, I don't know that they'd necessarily like it. And I think most people wouldn't. Because we're talking about, some pretty heavy stuff they're going to be doing. All right. Some of that could just be tone. But I just, I was thinking about the logical conclusion about some of the things that I want to do, and I think it'll take a hard turn real quick. Um, well, you know, like I was thinking about, I don't think I'm going to do this, but I was going to have them much later on down the road. They're going to start in the Bloodwind Spoil. They're going to do quite a bit in the Bloodwind Spoil. But I was thinking about, like, oh, what would I have them do if they got out? I was like, oh, maybe I could have them link up with a cult. And I thought it'd be funny to have like a Zinch demon or a Zinch cultist in disguise and have like a protect trans kids like t-shirt or button. But the idea is more like mutant kids, right? Like transitioning from like human to mutant type of a thing. And like that's the whole joke is they're using this ideology to try to like subvert uh, people to create mutants. You know, it's not really supposed to be like a direct like, oh, this is what the trans movement. No, it's just the joke. The joke is just it's the Lord of Change, and what they're really trying to do is mutate people. Um, you know, it's but I was thinking, it's like, okay, well, what if the city fall? Well, obviously, that character would want to uh, to have the players capture as many children as they can. I was like, what? So this guy can turn them into chaos spawn? Like that's kind of horrifying, you know. So it's just like, you know, it seems like kind of a silly like joke potentially if the player succeeds, turns into something horrifying. Now, my players would probably kill that cultist, but it's just one of those things that you got to think is like, what is it? What is chaos really trying to do? Chaos is trying to turn innocent humans into twisted humans, right? It's trying to turn a virtuous person into a caricature of what they are, right? Like a corn champion is trying to twist somebody else into being as violent as he is, you know, like a Nurgle champion is trying to twist somebody into being a sickened Hulk like he is and spread filth everywhere he goes. Um, and I wonder, like, if it's effectively conveyed to the characters, I wonder how many players would really enjoy playing that outside the Bloodwind Spoil, where you're just dealing with, like I said, cultists and adventurers. Um, you know, you're going to have slaves, but the slaves are potentially already subjugated. You know, maybe they're even in revolt, and you're just putting down a revolt. But it's kind of up to the players what they're going to do with their slaves, right? They don't have to treat them badly. In fact, they can care for their slaves if they want, right? They can be an enlightened slave owner or whatever. But I think when it comes to like, oh, you know, we're planting this Slaaneshi cultist in the orphanage so that they can subvert children. You might start getting people uncomfortable with what they're doing, right? When they succeed, they might find themselves wanting to fail. But I don't know. We'll see how that turns out as we move on. If people end up being uncomfortable with it and they want to, they like the system enough, then we'll switch over to Soulbound. I've got some big Soulbound modules, Blackened Earth and Shadows in the Mist I haven't run. Ulfenkarn actually turned out to be a really cool book. I thought it was just going to be like kind of a shallow info book on the city, It's like a full freaking campaign, and it's got its own special type of character. Like a more low fantasy style of character. I don't know how low fantasy they're going to be in Soulbound, but I mean they're more like of a low, like they don't get metal back. I think is the big thing, which really cuts the brakes on them. But anyway, we could play Soulbound. Um, but my plan for the campaign is at least while they're in the Bloodwind Spoil, it's going to be relatively lighthearted and fun. My intention is just to let them enjoy playing a villain. If it does get to the point where they get out of the Bloodwind Spoil and they're starting to try to subvert the cities of Sigmar and things like that, um, I'm probably going to make them. I'm going to try to express to them what they're actually doing. And they may not care. I might not effectively convey what's happening to them, or they might, maybe that's just a dark fantasy they've got. Um, and it's better to express it in a game than in some other way. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I am going to consider that done. I have gone on for way too long, as it is, and it is time for bed. So have a good night.